"You're not welcome for Thanksgiving," my mom announced in front of everyone. "Family supports family, and you refused to co-sign your sister's $60,000 loan." I just smiled. The next morning, they woke up to frozen accounts, declined cards, and a lesson they'll never forget. It was supposed to be a peaceful Sunday dinner before Thanksgiving, the kind of pre-holiday get-together my mom loved throwing to set the tone for the season. The table was dressed with gold linens, the smell of roasted turkey filled the house, and everyone, my parents, my two sisters, their husbands, and even my nieces, were chatting away as if we were the picture of a happy family. Except we weren't. I had this uneasy feeling that something was off from the moment I walked through the door. My mom barely greeted me. My younger sister, Chloe, didn't even make eye contact. And my older sister, Bethany, was putting on that fake sweet smile she uses when she's about to do something manipulative. I took a seat quietly, poured myself some water, and tried to make small talk. But the tension was thick, almost choking. Halfway through dinner, when the plates were full and everyone was pretending to be civil, my mom clinked her glass with a spoon and cleared her throat dramatically. "Before we say grace," she began, "I think there's something the whole family needs to hear." I already knew. My stomach dropped. She turned to me, eyes cold and full of judgment. "You're not welcome to Thanksgiving this year, Emily." The table went silent. Even the kids froze. I blinked, trying to process it. "Excuse me?" Mom straightened her back, her voice rising. "You heard me. You refused to co-sign your sister Chloe's student loan consolidation. $60,000, Emily. Family helps family, and you chose to abandon yours." Chloe let out a fake sob. "I just needed help. My credit isn't good right now. I can't get approved a loan." I stayed calm. "I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm protecting my financial stability. Co-signing means if you don't pay, I pay. And given your track record," I looked at her pointedly, "I'd be paying." Bethany smirked. "Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic. You make 6 figures. You wouldn't even notice a few payments." That's when I realized they'd all been in on this. My mom chimed in again. "You've always been selfish, Emily. Always about yourself. You think you're better than everyone because you bought your own house, because you don't need help. Well, we don't need your attitude. You can spend Thanksgiving alone this year." Everyone looked at me, waiting for me to cry or argue. But I just smiled. "All right," I said softly. "If that's how you feel." And I stood up, placed my napkin on the table, and walked out. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat at my desk and logged into my laptop. You see, I work as a senior fraud and compliance analyst for a major bank, the same bank where both my mom and Chloe have their accounts. I don't have access to private data directly, that would be illegal, but I do know how to report suspicious activity effectively. And I'd been sitting on something for a while, something that had been gnawing at me for months. Back in July, I noticed a credit application submitted under my name that I didn't make. It was denied because the income verification didn't match. I brushed it off, assuming it was identity theft, and filed a report. But after some digging, I realized the application came from the same IP address as my mom's house. They tried to use my identity. So that night, I decided it was time to protect myself properly. I submitted formal fraud alerts to all 3 credit bureaus, froze my credit, and reported the incident again with detailed evidence this time, including dates, IP logs, and the internal note that linked the application to an address under my family's name. Then, I went one step further. I knew Chloe had been using my mom's credit card for emergencies, and Mom had been dipping into Dad's retirement fund without telling him. She'd mentioned it once, drunkenly. So, I quietly filed a report to the bank's internal audit department under an anonymous whistleblower channel, flagging suspicious linked accounts and irregular fund transfers. It wasn't personal. It was justice. The next morning, my phone started blowing up. "Bethany, what the hell did you do?" Chloe, Mom's crying. Her cards aren't working. Mom, Emily. Call me. Now. Apparently, their accounts had been frozen pending investigation. Transactions were blocked. Automatic payments bounced. Even Chloe's rent transfer got declined. And since they all banked at the same institution, everything got tangled together during the fraud review. For once, I didn't rush to fix their chaos. I simply texted back. Guess sometimes family has to learn responsibility. Happy early Thanksgiving. Then I put my phone on silent. Over the next week, I started getting bits and pieces of information from mutual friends. My mom was furious. Apparently, she'd been using a joint account in my late father's name, which was illegal, since his estate had closed years ago. Chloe's loan application triggered the investigation, and once the auditors started digging, everything came crashing down. By Thanksgiving week, they were still under review. My mom had to borrow money from Bethany, who wasn't thrilled about it. The family's perfect image crumbled fast. I, meanwhile, spent Thanksgiving quietly at home, roasting a small turkey for myself, watching snow fall outside, and feeling, for the first time in years, at peace. A week later, I got a call from my mom. Her voice was small, shaky. Emily, she said. We need to talk. I stayed silent. They froze everything. They're saying there were irregular transfers from Dad's pension. They think I was doing something illegal. I wasn't. I swear I wasn't. I sighed. Mom, you know I can't discuss that. It's under investigation. There was a pause. Please, honey. We're family. And there it was, that line again. Family supports family, I repeated slowly. Isn't that what you said? She started to cry. I didn't mean. I think you did, I said softly. But it's okay. I've learned that supporting family doesn't mean letting them destroy you. And I hung up. It's been 3 months since that night. My mom's accounts were eventually unfrozen, but she had to pay thousands in penalties and legal fees. Chloe had to declare partial bankruptcy, and Bethany stopped speaking to both of them after realizing how much money they'd funneled from the family fund she'd been paying into for years. And me? I'm still the villain in their story. The selfish one. The daughter who didn't help. But I also sleep soundly knowing my identity, and my peace, are finally safe. Sometimes, family expects unconditional loyalty. But loyalty without boundaries isn't love, it's servitude. And when they tried to teach me a lesson about supporting family, they ended up learning what happens when you bite the hand that actually understands the system you're playing with. So no, I didn't sit at their Thanksgiving table. But I had the best dinner of my life, with freedom as my only guest. 3 months after Thanksgiving, I thought the chaos had finally settled. The fraud investigation wrapped up. My mother had been forced to pay fines, Chloe's bankruptcy had gone through, and Bethany had moved her money to a different bank out of paranoia. I had my peace back. Until one cold February morning, a thick envelope arrived at my door. Inside was a letter that made my stomach twist, a formal notice of intent to sue. The plaintiffs? My mother, my sister Chloe, and, to my shock, even Bethany. Their claim? Defamation, emotional distress, and interference with financial stability. They were blaming me for maliciously causing their accounts to be frozen, saying my false reports had ruined their reputation, finances, and mental well-being. I almost laughed. But as I read further, the laughter faded. They had actually hired a lawyer. That night, I sat in my living room, staring at the lawsuit, feeling a strange mix of disbelief and sadness. How do you even begin to process that your own family, the people who raised you, are trying to destroy your livelihood because you refuse to be their safety net? Still, I wasn't going to let them win. If they wanted a legal fight, they were going to get one, just not the kind they expected. I called my friend Mara, who happens to be a corporate attorney. When she finished reading the papers, she let out a low whistle. They really think this will hold up, she said. You didn't leak private information, you didn't lie, you filed a legitimate fraud report. That's not defamation. That's due diligence. Exactly, I said. But I think there's more. I want to see what they're hiding. Over the next few weeks, as my attorney prepared a response, discovery began, meaning both sides had to exchange relevant documents and evidence. That's when things got interesting. Chloe had submitted partial bank statements as part of her case. One of the pages had a visible transfer ID, which linked to an account I recognized. It belonged to a small charity that my mother supposedly donated to every month. Except, that charity didn't exist. With Mara's help, we subpoenaed additional statements. And what we found blew the whole thing wide open. For 3 years, my mom had been funneling money from my late father's pension, the one she claimed she couldn't access, into a fake nonprofit account under her own name. Chloe, meanwhile, had used that same account to fund her vacations and business expenses. They weren't victims. They were committing fraud. And their lawsuit had just dragged all of it into public record. When our response was filed, we attached the evidence, the false transfers, the fake accounts, the signed loan attempts under my name, the inconsistencies in their own statements. Within a week, their lawyer withdrew from the case. Apparently, once he saw the documents, he realized representing them could implicate him if they lied under oath. The next day, I got another call, this time from my mother. Her voice was furious, shaking. "How could you do this to us?" she screamed. "We're family. We just wanted to make things right." "Mom," I said quietly. "You tried to sue me for protecting myself. You're destroying your own blood." I took a deep breath. "No. I'm holding my family accountable, for once." There was a pause, and then she said something that almost made me laugh. "You think you're so smart with your job and your rules. But we can still win this." I didn't even answer. I just hung up. A few weeks later, the court officially dismissed their case, with prejudice, meaning they couldn't refile. The judge's statement was short but brutal. "The plaintiffs have failed to demonstrate any legal grounds for defamation or damages. The defendants' actions were consistent with lawful reporting of suspicious activity." In other words, they lost. But the humiliation didn't stop there. Because the moment those filings became public, the financial department at my mother's old job, where she still had some pension ties, started asking questions. Then the IRS followed. Within 2 months, she was under official audit. And Chloe? Her business expenses caught the attention of her bankruptcy trustee, who reopened her case for potential fraud. Bethany, realizing she'd been pulled into a sinking ship, reached out to me one night with a shaky voice. "I didn't know, Emily," she said. "They told me it was just a misunderstanding." I swear. I could tell she was scared. And part of me wanted to forgive her. But I also remembered how she'd smirked at that dinner table when they kicked me out. "Bethany," I said softly. "You stood by them when they humiliated me in front of everyone. Now you're standing by them again, in court. I don't think you were misled. I think you just didn't want to lose your share of the money." She didn't deny it. She just cried. By summer, everything had changed. My mom sold her house to pay off fines. Chloe moved back in with her after losing her apartment. And the family group chat, the one that used to buzz with gossip and photos, went silent. No more fake Sunday dinners. No more forced smiles. Just silence. Meanwhile, I'd been promoted. My boss called my performance exceptional under pressure. I'd started therapy, too, not because of guilt, but because I needed to understand why I'd tolerated their manipulation for so long. And you know what I realized? My family never hated me because I said no. They hated me because I couldn't be controlled. Last month, I got one last letter from my mom. No apology, just a few bitter lines. "You got what you wanted. We're ruined. Hope you're proud." I folded the letter carefully, put it in a drawer, and whispered, "Finally." Because she was right, I did get what I wanted. Not their destruction. But freedom. Freedom from the guilt, the manipulation, the constant demand to prove I was family enough. They taught me that love with strings isn't love, it's leverage. And when those strings snapped, I realized just how light life can feel without being tangled in them. So no, I didn't destroy my family. They did that themselves, when they mistook my boundaries for betrayal, and my silence for weakness. All I did was step out of the way and let the truth do the talking. And this Thanksgiving? I'll be raising a glass to peace, the kind that doesn't come from forgiveness, but from finally being done. 3 years had passed since my family tried to ruin me. 3 years of peace, quiet, and freedom. Then one gray November morning, I opened my cabin door, and there they were. My mother and Chloe. They looked older, defeated. My mother's once perfect hair was streaked with gray, and Chloe's confidence was gone. "Emily," my mom whispered. "Can we talk?" I should have said no. But I stepped aside. They sat stiffly on my couch. "We lost everything," Mom said. "The house, the savings, we're barely getting by." Chloe nodded, eyes down. "I know we don't deserve your help. But we didn't know who else to ask." I looked at them, two people who'd called me selfish, sued me, humiliated me, and all I felt was exhaustion. "Why now?" I asked. Mom's voice cracked. "Because I finally understand how wrong I was. Family should forgive." I sighed. Family should also tell the truth. And you only come when you need something. She didn't deny it. Still, I gave them a number to a financial recovery program. "Call them," I said. "They'll help." "That's all I can offer." Mom frowned. "A shelter?" "Emily, that's humiliating." "Not as humiliating as what you did to me," I said quietly. They left without thanking me. Weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from my mom, and inside was a small check. "You didn't owe us help, but you gave it anyway. I'm sorry for everything." It wasn't much, but it was something real. That Thanksgiving, I visited her for the first time in years. No big reunion, no tears, just quiet understanding. She took my hand and whispered, "Thank you for still being my daughter." I didn't answer. I just held her hand back. Sometimes forgiveness isn't a grand moment. It's choosing peace when you could choose revenge. They lost everything trying to destroy me. I gained myself by letting them go. And that, finally, was enough. Final, the last Thanksgiving. A year after that quiet reunion, my mother passed away. Peacefully, in her sleep. No drama, no spectacle, just silence. When I stood at her small memorial, I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't even feel sadness. Just a strange calm, like I'd finally finished a chapter that had been open too long. Chloe stood beside me, eyes red. We didn't say much. At the end of the service, she whispered, "She talked about you a lot at the end. Said she wished she'd been more like you." For the first time in years, I smiled at my sister, not bitterly, but gently. "We both made mistakes," I said. "Let's not repeat them." That Thanksgiving, I cooked 2 plates. One for me, one for the memory of the woman who, despite everything, taught me the hardest lesson of all, that sometimes love means walking away. I sat by the fire, candle flickering, snow falling outside, and whispered, "I forgive you. And I'm free. No revenge. No pain. Just peace." And that's how the story ends, not with a fight, but with freedom.